Okay, so let's just clear this up right off the bat. If you're looking for my picks for what will be nominated at the 2018 Oscars, click the link in the description. That's the video you're looking for. Those are my Oscar predictions. I'll let you go there right now. This video is what I think should be nominated at the 2018 Oscars. If I had my way, if I had my ballot to go towards the Academy Award nominations, these are the movies that I'd be checking and putting down on my list. Someone recommended me doing this a while back, and I thought it was an interesting idea. I'd never done this before. I'd never tried to actually put together a list of what I thought was the best of the best and what I feel deserves some recognition at this show. And so I decided to finally do that and compile my own list. It was interesting. It was a lot of fun to go back and research and look at the movies that I'd seen. See even what similarities in terms of decisions I had as to what I think the Oscars are going to debate and talk about and actually put in their show. So I'm going to try and stray away from talking too long about a lot of these, especially ones that I've already touched on in detail in previous videos. I'm kind of going to separate this in my categories into two separate little subcategories, into movies I think the Academy is going to nominate and that I agree with, and then movies I don't think they're going to nominate that I would put in there personally because I favor those movies more than it seems the Academy does. I'm also only focusing on the big categories. I wish I could go a little further, like technical categories, even foreign films. Foreign films I can't do because I haven't seen any because they just don't release here like as much as I'd like them to, so I can't touch on that as much as I'd like to. But technical categories, I don't want to sort of start getting repetitive, and I feel like if I were to get into those categories I would be just sort of saying the same thing over and over again, and I don't necessarily want to do that. Maybe in the future, maybe next award season I'll do something like that, but for right now I'm focusing on picture, director, lead, actress and actor, and then supporting actor, supporting actress, and both screenplay categories. So, without further ado, let's get started. So in terms of Best Picture, like I said, I'm going to separate this into what I think the Oscars will nominate and then talk a little bit about those and why I agree with that, and then what I don't think they will that I would put in there. So I've got movies like Call Me By Your Name, Dunkirk, Get Out, Lady Bird, The Shape of Water, and Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. These are just all some of the movies that I feel were some of the best crafted of the year all around, and I think that the fact that the Oscars are giving these films the kind of recognition that they deserve is awesome. Call Me By Your Name, I talked a lot about in my review, how I think it's one of the most encapsulating and engrossing films of the year for many different reasons, for its direction, for its performances, for its writing, and it certainly warrants a best 10 of the year for that. Dunkirk, it is an accomplishment in filmmaking. It's something that you don't get to see very often. You don't see movies like this a whole lot. It absolutely deserves the recognition it's going to get at the Oscars, and calling it one of the 10 best is a no-brainer for me, just everything that it did, and I think some of the complaints with this movie are a little short-sighted, and I don't really think they're thinking about the broader scheme of the film enough. Get Out, people have been giving Get Out a lot of backlash, which is simply just what happens when a movie gets this kind of accolades and people love this movie as much as they do. I personally found it to be one of the most intelligent and interesting films of the year. I was enthralled for 2 hours of my time, blown away by some of the decisions Jordan Peele made, blown away by some of just the mentality that he had, and how meticulously crafted this film was, and for that reason I put it in mine. Wow, I'm getting a phone call right now. Decline. Lady Bird is another kind of like Call Me By Your Name. It's just like an all-around player, especially in the writing and the screenplay, and just overall the feel that you get walking out of this movie is quite brilliant to me. It's not as like everywhere in my categories. I'll kind of touch on that in a little bit, but the feeling that I had walking out of it the first time was simply enough to just shoot it onto this list. It's got brilliant writing, it's got brilliant performances, and it's just all around a brilliant movie. The Shape of Water, which I actually just saw again last night, is pretty much as good as I remember it being. The direction of the film is phenomenal. It's a visual marvel. It really is. It's got a great story to it, great performances, great technical aspects to it, great cinematography and visuals, like I said, and sound editing and score, and a lot of that stuff really plays into what makes it a really great film as a whole. And then Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, I've talked about at length. It's my favorite film of the year, and I think it's absolutely one of the best of the year. It really has a lot going for it in terms of messages and all around cast and crew, and I think that movie really succeeds in what it's trying to do. So the ones that I have that I don't think the Academy will have on their list, we'll start with The Big Sick. In general, I think this movie is purely well made enough to be put into a Best Picture category. You've got really great and just in general natural writing, things that come across as real human beings, what they would say. And I know it obviously helps that it's a true story and the people who lived the true story wrote the film, but that's not a knock on it. It's like that just helps the quality of the film. You really find yourself within these people, within their lives, and that's so encapsulating to me and warranting of a picture nomination. And the fact that it's being overlooked in that category, and even in the original screenplay category, which in their defense is a tight category, but I think that it's absolutely warranting of a Best Picture nomination. Darkest Hour, I talked about how in my top 10 movies of the year, I thought it's being overlooked in this category. I think people are focusing too much on Gary Oldman and his performance and not how well done the rest of the movie is. It's so well written and so well directed, and there's so many other great performances in the film. You've got great technical aspects, you've got great cinematography, surprisingly good visual effects, great lighting, a great color palette. Like, I think everything just sort of falls into place with this movie, and it's a shame to me that it's being overlooked in so many places, and I'm not going to make that mistake. I have my own ballot right here, and I'm checking it off. I put Detroit on here. Detroit is a movie everyone has kind of forgot about, which is sort of the fault of the production company for releasing it at the time that they did. But it's also because a lot of people are upset that a white woman directed this film. And personally, I think if the movie is respectful and the movie turned out as well as it did, that should not matter. It's a really, really well put together film. It is a gripping film, one that has you biting your teeth until the very end, until the credits roll. You've got some great performances, some solid writing. Kathryn Bigelow always brings that awesome style of direction that she brings with all of her films, and it really, really works in this one. Sure, I have kind of a problem with them calling it Detroit too, because it should be called the Algiers Motel, but that's, I don't have a say in that. But I think this movie is just great, and it's really interesting and something that it's an important film to see. And I think if you need to get out to the theaters to see a film that you might have missed, this is probably one to check out. Molly's Game is another one I put on here. Molly's Game simply is just, not only does it have a great story, but it has, in my opinion, one of the best scripts of the year. It has some of the standout performances of the year, and it's being overlooked everywhere simply for a lack of campaigning, I think, and the fact that the Academy doesn't like Aaron Sorkin. I'm not going to make that mistake. I think that it's a movie that's 2.5 hours long that never feels that way. The pacing is pretty much perfect. Nothing is put into this movie for no reason. It moves seamlessly. The editing is great. The style is great. And I would absolutely call it one of the 10 best films of the year. And my last one is Phantom Thread, which I recently saw, and the more I think about the film, the more I absolutely love it. I think that they really did a number on this movie. Paul Thomas Anderson, it's his love child, it's his baby, and you can really tell. It's just, it's a story that you see from the trailers, and it's nothing like you would expect it to be. It's gripping, it's intense, it's interesting. You've got pretty much great everything. It's closest to perfection you're probably going to see all year, because just everything across the board really plays out. There are like 2 minor issues I had with this movie, and everything else really works. I wish I'd seen it in 2017 so it would have been put on my list. So, moving into Best Director, now that I've talked even more than I thought I was going to talk and didn't want to talk that much, so I'm going to try and narrow this down a little bit. This list is sort of similar in a way to what I think the Oscars are going to do, but I think that, again, Best Director is sort of tight this year, so it's hard not to talk about. Guillermo del Toro for The Shape of Water, again, having just seen that movie again last night, he really does do a great job. I didn't think he should have won the Golden Globe, and I don't think he should win the Oscar, but he will. He really puts together something that's artistically phenomenal. It's a beautiful looking picture, and on top of that, he directs these characters and these actors to their bests. He really brings out a sense of emotion and evocation. I actually don't know how to pronounce that word. It's like evoking emotion, but I don't know how to use that word in that tense. I'm sorry. But he really brings to life these characters and their dynamics and their relationships when it all is centered around one specific center, which is this fucking fish. And I think that that's sort of important to look at when you've got a movie like this, and I think he's sort of the core of the film. Martin McDonagh for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. He's the center of force for this movie that just brings so much to the big screen, that brings all of these excellent performances and an excellent screenplay and an excellent score and excellent pacing. Like, it all ties back to him. He's really at the core of the film, and the movie just doesn't work without his touch on it, without his sense of this is mine and I'm gonna do it my way, because so many other directors would have taken this script and interpreted it a different way and done it a different way, but he brings that gritty sense of style to life, that dark comedy to life. He's just really good at that, and I think he shines more than he's ever shown in this movie, and I think he really blows it out of the water. Christopher Nolan for Dunkirk. As I said, it's an accomplishment in film. What he set out to do as a director is just impeccable. The fact that he did everything practically and went out of his way to make this film as real as it possibly could be. That's it. That's what I warrant for him a Best Director nomination. And it all worked. If it hadn't worked, then you have a conversation, but it worked. Denis Villeneuve for Blade Runner 2049. While I have some narrative problems with this movie, I don't think there's any doubting how directionally phenomenal this film is. It is just it is a technical masterpiece. When you look at the technical side of the film, it is a 10 out of 10. There's nothing wrong with it. The cinematography is beautiful. The sound is fantastic. The score is excellent. The makeup and hairstyling even, and all of that is meticulous choices from Denis Villeneuve. You can tell how much of a passion and drive he had for this film. And like I said, while I have some script issues with the movie, I think his directing was almost perfect, and I think it turned out the way exactly it should have for him. I would have altered the script a little bit, but I think as a director he did the job he was going to do, and it's like a rival. It resulted as one of the best directed films of the year, even though I didn't think it was one of the best films of the year. And the last one I have is Paul Thomas Anderson for Phantom Thread. He, again, really brings a film that you would not expect to be as enthralling as it would be to life. He is the core behind that film. He puts it together in an exquisite form, but it's not pretentious. He doesn't think he's smarter than his audience. There are sequences in this movie that are just directed to sheer perfection. And for that reason alone, I put him on here. I left someone like Greta Gerwig out of this category simply because I feel like when I walked out of Lady Bird, the standout for me was not the direction, it was the script. And I left her an original screenplay for that reason. But these 5 directors sort of came out above that for me in just many specific reasons as to what I thought they did. Greta Gerwig, in terms of direction, I felt as though I'd kind of seen her format of direction before in many coming-of-age stories. So I tried to put in certain nominees that really went out of their way to do something above and beyond in terms of not only technical, but like bringing certain characters and things to life that you just wouldn't expect to be brought to life in a certain fashion. Leading actor, I have Timothée Chalamet for Call Me By Your Name. Everyone thinks he should win, which I 100% disagree with, but that's just my personal view, I guess. He's a breakthrough actor this year, and he really brings a strong sense of emotion to the screen. He's the core, and he does a great job playing alongside Armie Hammer, who I'll get to, but the movie doesn't work without the two of them, and he really is the center. He's what everything is revolving around, and he does a phenomenal job bringing that to life. Jake Gyllenhaal for Stronger. He just got fucked because his movie was released in September. There are 2 months where movies go to die. January is where regular movies go to die. September is where award season movies go to die. If you're trying to get nominated for Oscars, do not put your movie in September. It will die. I don't know how or why, it just does. But Jake Gyllenhaal really brings a powerful performance to the screen. Just that one scene in the car where he's everything falls apart, everything breaks, and he's spilling out to Tatiana Maslany. He has this phenomenal arc from beginning to end, and you feel it the whole way through. He brings it to life, even more than the direction, and even more than the screenplay. There is no one else that I would have rather seen in that role than Jake Gyllenhaal, and he is far powerful enough to be in this category. Daniel Kaluuya for Get Out. I know a lot of people are again saying he should not be nominated, but I disagreed with that. I find it almost one of the most difficult performances to play, to be the one regular person in a world of unnatural people, and he does that almost perfectly. He is the standout for that reason, and he has to upplay regular more than most people would, to the point where you wouldn't even notice it. It's so subtle that you can't even tell, but he does it so well that, in my opinion, it's worthy of a nomination. I've kind of acted as these kinds of characters before, so I understand what it's like to do that, and I think it's a lot more difficult than people would imagine. Gary Oldman for Darkest Hour. He transforms. He is Winston Churchill. He's not Gary Oldman. Every little thing, obviously the makeup and hairstyling is due credit for this as well, but just his mannerisms, his inflections, it's all about the little details, the little things he does, not just the look of him, that completely transforms him into Winston Churchill. I think he is brilliant in this role. The fact that people are talking about who's better, him or Daniel Day-Lewis from Lincoln, is absolutely worthy of a discussion, and that's just, he blows it out of the water. The last place I struggled with, I didn't put James Franco in here because I constantly have said that I was not as impressed with his performance. I thought it was just James Franco doing a Tommy Wiseau impression. I put Jeremy Renner in here for Wind River. That is another performance that I find to be so subtly great. There is a lot behind that character, and a lot that's you really get through Jeremy Renner's performance more than the script, because it's obviously his backstory is written into the script, but it doesn't come to life in the way that it should come to life without Jeremy Renner as that role. He really knows what to do with it. He really knows how to bring that emotion and that core of the film forward, which is what he is of Wind River, and I think Wind River was overlooked by a lot of people as a film. But he really does a number on this character, and just doing everything in a way that you almost forget he's putting on a performance. I keep using that word subtle, but I think that's an important word, because he's so under the radar that people almost have been forgetting how brilliant he is in the role and in the film itself, and so I put him on my list. Leading actress, I'm just going to talk about the 4 real quick who are going to be nominated for the Oscars anyway. Sally Hawkins, Frances McDormand, Margot Robbie, Saoirse Ronan. All of them deserve their nominations for many different reasons. I'll talk really quickly about each because I'm already running long. Sally Hawkins has to do everything without performing one line of dialogue. Everything is through her face, everything is through her mannerisms, everything is through her body, and she does that brilliantly. No one else could have played that role better than her. Frances McDormand for 3 Billboards just has that gritty, back to the old Frances McDormand, return to form kind of type deal. She is gritty, she's funny, she's got a great screen presence, she has everything she needs to be nominated for this category. Margot Robbie becomes Tanya Harding, sort of like Gary Oldman, in every little thing that she does. She really is Tanya Harding. She's a completely different person. Again, the makeup and hairstyling, there's part of credit to that, but as a performance, she really brings the charisma and just sort of the bitchiness of Tanya Harding, but also the human side of her to life. And Saoirse Ronan does a great job in the classic kind of coming-of-age picture, but adding a little something to it, adding a little oomph to it. There's more to her character, and she really brings that to life. I didn't put Meryl Streep in here because when I saw the post, it reminded me a lot of Spotlight, as to where you have a solid script, and the actor's job is basically just to read it. They're kind of placeholders to read this really good script, and it's the same thing with Tom Hanks. I put Jessica Chastain in here instead for Molly's Game. I feel as though she puts on just this strong, centered performance, every time she walks into the room, you're already like, oh, fucking A, all right, here we go. Like, she's just got that presence and that attitude, and it's probably one of the strengthiest female performances I've seen in a while. It's written for her, and she just brings it to life. She's witty, she's on the spot, she's got depth. All of the things that deserve a nomination she's got. I don't think it's out of the question that she could be nominated for an Oscar after The Post has sort of decreased in its chances recently, but yeah, she absolutely warranted a place on my list. Supporting actor, the two that I have that I think will be nominated for Oscars, I did put on here. I have Willem Dafoe for The Florida Project, who is another, I keep saying his performance is quite similar to that of Mahershala Ali in Moonlight. They have a very similar type of performance. They're there to elevate the rest of the film, but be cut back to as a remembrance of, and they're really good in this movie. And Sam Rockwell, man, he hits a career high. He completely delves into the character of Dixon, and he's unrecognizable. He's hilarious, but he's also despicable, and you resent him for certain reasons. And I never thought that I'd be able to resent someone as charming as Sam Rockwell, and he does that brilliantly. I just barely left out Armie Hammer for the Call Me By Your Name, just because I think the other three that I put in here really did something that I found to be just so impeccable and unexpected, almost. I have Idris Elba for Molly's Game in here. He's the perfect kind of anti to Jessica Chastain. They both have the same witty screenplay to work off of, and I've said that Aaron Sorkin brings out the best performances possible in his actors. Idris Elba, I think, puts on one of the best performances I've seen out of him. He is absolutely brilliant in this role. He knows exactly how to handle this screenplay and not sound unnatural, not sound forced. He sounds like a real human being that's just even more intelligent, and I think he does that in a sense that's one of the best 5 supporting performances of the year. Will Poulter for Detroit. Shit on me for it. I don't care. He is one of the reasons that this movie works so well is that it's not so in your face. It's not cramming things in your throat. He is this despicable human being, but he doesn't just, like, spout racial slurs at you. He's not just, you know, going crazy and you know, knocking people out and just shooting them for no reason. But, like, well, he does do that. But, like, he's not just doing it over the top. He's this resented character because of how just quiet he is. This menacing sense to him. This terrifying sense to him. The fact that he went from the kid in the Maze Runner to this blows my mind. He is terrifying in this film for all the right reasons. You can tell how much he researched how to do this kind of character and what to put into it. And I think it comes across brilliantly. I think he did a magnificent job working on this film, being this character. And I know people that might disagree with me on this, but I really thought he was quite excellent. And then the last one I have is Jason Mitchell for Mudbound, who I actually found to be the standout of the film, as opposed to Mary J. Blige. He really blew me out of the water. I'd never seen him in anything before. I still haven't seen Straight Outta Compton, but he's another one who presents this great arc, and a lot of it is because of his dynamic with the other actors. He's very natural with them. He has some kind of weird written exposition, but he does it in a way that makes it feel right, that makes it feel like a real human being. And I think he's sort of what brings the film to life. You could talk about a lot of other performers and what they do for it, but he's the real emotional core of the film, and I think he does a spectacular job of bringing that to life. If you can't tell, I'm trying to get through these a little more quickly because I don't want to talk extensively about all of these. Supporting actress, I've got Holly Hunter for The Big Sick, who I think it's again, like Frances McDormand, it's a return to form for her. It's something we haven't really seen out of her in a while. She's charming, she's witty, she's interesting, she's got depth, she's got gravitas. There's more to her character than originally meets the eye, and she brings that about in a really subtle but interesting kind of way. I love Holly Hunter, and I think this is one of the best performances we've seen out of her in a long time, and she's part of what really makes The Big Sick. I think that was perfect casting. Allison Janney for I, Tonya. she's the kind of perfect supporting actress. She's the witty, interesting, charismatic, but also, you know, we really don't like her for all of the right reasons. She's no longer Allison Janney, the Allison Janney that we all love. She's just I hate using the word despicable again. She's this awful human who tries to defend her actions in a sense that almost we hate ourselves for kind of going, she makes a point, you know. But she really, again, she's a transformation of a character, or of a performance, and she really does that quite well. I put Tatiana Maslany on here for stronger because I think she plays off of Jake Gyllenhaal so well. Jake Gyllenhaal has to have this coming to terms with himself, and Tatiana Maslany has to have a coming to terms with Jake Gyllenhaal, and both of them have this great flow throughout the entire film. And it's not just to the writing's credit, it's to their credit, and they both. I think Jake Gyllenhaal got a lot of the praise for this movie, but I think Tatiana Maslany is just as good in this movie as supporting actress, and working to almost elevate the character of Jeff Bowman and his struggle and his problems, and she still stands out as her own character, as someone that we almost at times dislike Jake Gyllenhaal for making her feel a certain way, or for making her do a certain thing, and you're in this constant balance or unbalance between who to root for, and that's, I think, in my opinion, both due to both of their performances. Laurie Metcalf for Lady Bird is just, you know, kind of the great counterbalance to Saoirse Ronan. You don't really know if she's a protagonist or an antagonist. Every time you start to like her, she does something that makes you not like her again, and she just does that in a great way. She's similar to Allison Janney, but a little toned back, a little bit more condensed, a little bit more sincere, I guess would be a word for it, and Laurie Metcalf presents this character, this complex character, in the best way that she possibly could. And Kristen Scott Thomas for Darkest Hour, who I think is another performance that's being heavily overlooked. Not only does she sort of work to elevate Gary Oldman, but every time she's on screen, she steals the show. She doesn't come in very often, but she just has this great sense of line delivery, and sense of her character, and sense of what this movie is really trying to accomplish. And every time I saw her on screen, my focus was directly driven to her, and she blew me out of the water because I haven't seen her in as much as I would have liked to. Best Original Screenplay, I said earlier about The Big Sick. I put The Big Sick on here. I think it has the perfect balance between comedy and drama, and builds these characters, these complex characters and dynamics and relationships in a really interesting way. Get Out, again, for the meticulousity of it, how every line plays into the end of the film. There is not one scene written into this movie that doesn't serve a purpose other than get him, Grandpa, and I find this movie to just be spectacularly written. I, Tonya, just for its dialogue, for its witty dialogue, and for how unbelievable it is, for how unnaturally natural it is. You really have to keep a consistent tone and style with a screenplay like I, Tonya, and I think they absolutely managed to do that. Lady Bird, I've talked about extensively in this video, bringing to life these characters and these relationships. The biggest thing I think the movie has going for it, too, is its structure, and how well it flows, and how seamlessly it moves from certain storyline to storyline, because there's a lot happening in this movie, and the script really does that well. And 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, just for how darkly comedic yet gritty and real and aggressive the film is, and lines that you just don't expect to ever be said by a human being. Creative lines, fresh lines, new lines are brought to life in this script. Adapted Screenplay was a little harder because it's so loose this year. There's not a lot to nominate. Call Me By Your Name, pretty obvious. I think it brings to life these characters and these relationships, and again, I've talked about natural, in a natural way, in a way that real human beings act and real human beings talk. This script really understands human nature. The Disaster Artist, I don't love the movie, but it's good enough to be in this category just because it's a very, like, slim category this year. It's funny, it's compelling, it's a great story, and for that reason I put it in. I wish there was more I could say. I put Logan in here. I think Logan has a really great script. I'm really sick, I'm sorry. a really great message behind it. Some really great and interesting lines that don't just work as a comic book film, but as a film itself. There are some just really strong concepts written into this film that I have to give the script credit for. Molly's Game, again, I stand by. I think it's one of the best scripts of the year. I don't think Aaron Sorkin, I think he's on a 4 for 4 since 2010 so far. His dialogue is just as snappy and witty and phenomenal as ever. It's so hard to write a script like that. It's a 200-page script that has to be so meticulously laid out and written, and every little detail of thought put into it that I have to give him credit for that. And Mudbound, which I think, again, brings to life a compelling story in such an intricate way. The writing is not... It's like Detroit. It's not crammed down your throat. It's minor. It's laid back. It's something you don't really notice until you start really thinking about the writing and what people are saying and how this matters throughout the rest of the movie. It's hard to write a script like that, and I think they really accomplish what they're going for in that regard. Anyway, that is it. Those are my picks for what I would nominate. Again, these are my personal opinions. These are what I would nominate, not what I think will be nominated. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with in the comments. I'm sure you guys have a couple of things that you'd be willing to debate back and forth with me, and I'm very interested to see your comments on this. Tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, I will be doing my SAG Award live stream where I watch the SAGs with a friend of mine. It's going to be like a 6-hour live stream. We're going to be watching like a little bit of the red carpet, and we kind of use that to talk about what we think is going to win and what needs to win and what should win. And then we'll be actually reacting to the awards themselves and talking a little bit after about what they mean for the Oscars. And then the nominations come out in a couple days, and I'll be doing a reaction video to those, so keep an eye out for all that stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching. The channel continues to grow, and I appreciate your support more than you know. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all next time.